The billionaire was still yelling when the maid raised a glowing device to his daughter's throat. And the girl who had never spoken, not once in her entire life, suddenly gasped, like something ancient had just awakened inside her. Every monitor in the mansion glitched, security systems crashed, power surged, and then Ivy's lips began to move. But the voice that came out was not human. What was inside her? Who put it there? And why did it wait 10 years to speak through her? Don't blink. Don't breathe. Because if this child isn't speaking for herself, then the question isn't what is coming. It's who she just called. Welcome back, family. If this already has your heart racing, stay with me. Because what's about to be revealed will not only challenge science, it will challenge everything you believe about fate, power, and a child's voice. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, because the next words Ivy speaks will change everything. The billionaire's daughter couldn't speak until the maid showed up with something no doctor could explain. That headline wasn't written yet, but destiny was already walking across the marble courtyard of Watson Industries. Glass towers stretched into a sky so clear it looked engineered. Fountains built by artificial intelligence sang silent rhythms only those who paid attention could feel. Power lived in that courtyard, cold, polished, untouchable. At the center of it all walked Jacob Watson, billionaire tech mogul, voice sharp. Phone pressed to his ear as he closed a deal that would shake global markets. Trailing 6 steps behind him was his daughter, Ivy Watson, 10 years old. Dark hair parted into perfect twin braids, a white dress, spotless. Her eyes wide, intelligent, and silent. Ivy had never spoken a single word in her life. Not dad, not hi, not even a cry. Doctors called it selective neurological silence. Specialists said her brain could speak, but chose not to. Her father called it an unsolved problem. But Alice Phillips did not call it anything. She simply saw it. She stepped through the side entrance in a maid's uniform, but she did not walk like an employee. She moved like someone walking into a memory she'd already lived. Her posture calm, her eyes alert, as if every surface whispered secrets only she could hear. Jacob didn't notice her. But Ivy did. The girl stopped mid-step. Her small hand moved to her throat, gently pressing, as if something beneath the skin stirred. Alice froze. Her breath caught. She had seen that exact movement once before. The night her little sister tried to speak, moments before she died. Alice stepped closer, voice low, steady. I can make her speak. Jacob's head snapped around. His phone dropped from his ear. No doctor had ever dared say those words. No specialist, no surgeon, no neurologist. In 10 years, no one had spoken that sentence in his presence. Excuse me? Jacob's tone was a blade. Alice didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed on Ivy. I didn't say maybe, she replied softly. I said, I can make her speak. For a heartbeat, the entire courtyard seemed to pause. Even the fountain stopped sounding like music and began sounding like warning. Ivy's eyes locked on Alice with something Jacob had never seen in his daughter before. Recognition. As if she'd been waiting for this woman. As if silence itself had been waiting for this moment. Jacob Watson wasn't a man who tolerated riddles, especially when they involved his daughter. Within minutes of Alice's claim, Ivy was seated in her private therapy room inside the Watson estate. The room was designed by neurologists, speech therapists, behavioral scientists. Every inch built to coax a single word from her lips. None ever had. Ivy sat by the window as afternoon light spilled across her sketchbook. She didn't speak. She never did. But her pencil moved with purpose. She drew spirals, layer after layer, spinning inward, spinning outward. Jacob hated those spirals. They meant nothing to him. But Alice stepped closer and understood. She's not drawing spirals. Alice said softly. She's drawing frequencies. Jacob's jaw tensed. Stop speaking in riddles. If you know something, say it plainly. Alice didn't turn to him. Her eyes remained on Ivy. She hears things, Alice said. Not with her ears, with her body. But every time her body tries to speak back, something stops her. Jacob shook his head. Doctor said her brain chooses silence. Psychological trauma. Alice finally turned. Her calm was disturbing. Your daughter is not choosing silence. Silence is being forced upon her. Jacob opened his mouth to argue, but froze when Ivy suddenly dropped her pencil. Her pupils dilated. Her hand rose to her throat again. Alice knew that look. Without a word, she reached into her pocket and lifted a small silver instrument. It wasn't from any hospital Jacob recognized. Sleek. Minimal. No visible wires. A soft blue glow pulsed at its tip. Ivy's eyes widened. Her breath quickened. For the first time in her life, Ivy reacted. Not to a human voice, not to her father's pleading, but to that light. Alice lifted the device slowly. The blue light pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Ivy's lips parted. A sound, just a tiny breath, escaped her throat. Jacob's heart slammed in his chest. She's responding to it, Alice whispered. She knows this frequency. It was embedded in her before she even had a voice. Embedded. Jacob staggered back. What do you mean, embedded? Alice stepped closer to Ivy, voice gentle, almost maternal. Ivy, she whispered, do you feel it? Ivy blinked once, then twice. Her fingers trembled. Her eyes filled, not with fear, but with recognition. Jacob's voice broke. What is that device? Alice answered without turning. It's not a medical tool, she said. It's a key. The light intensified. Ivy gasped silently, as though something deep within her had awakened. On the monitor behind them, Ivy's neural activity spiked off the charts, all without a sound. Her body was speaking, just not in any language humans could hear. Alice finally looked up at Jacob. You've spent millions trying to teach your daughter how to speak, she said, but you never asked the right question. Jacob's fists clenched. And what question is that? Alice lowered the device, and the blue light dimmed. Ivy inhaled sharply, her hand falling from her throat. The question, Alice said quietly, eyes locked with Jacob's, is not why Ivy can't speak. It's what is stopping her. The Watson estate slept beneath a blanket of moonlight, but inside Ivy's therapy wing, the air trembled with anticipation, like the world itself was holding its breath. Alice moved in silence. No doctors, no observers, no father, just Ivy, asleep in her bed, and the soft blue glow of the mysterious device in Alice's hand. She activated it. Not a sound was made, but the monitors lining the wall flickered to life, reading frequencies no human voice could generate. Alice placed the device gently near Ivy's throat. Instantly, Ivy's eyes flew open. Not in fear, in recognition. Her pupils expanded, breathing quickened. Her small fingers clutched the sheets as if the very air around her had changed temperature. On the neurological monitor, lines spiked wildly. Alice spoke in a whisper, barely audible. It's okay. Let it move through you. Don't fight it. Ivy's lips parted. A vibration rose from deep inside her chest, too low to be a word, too alive to be silence. Alice leaned in. Ivy, speak. The vibration intensified. Ivy gasped. A sound, almost a word, reached the edge of existence. But then, something stopped it. Ivy's body went rigid. Her eyes flooded with terror. Her hand flew to her throat, clawing at the skin, as if something inside her was shutting her voice down. On the monitor, a violent pulse of electricity surged across her vocal nerve pathway, like a circuit flipping from green to red. Alice froze. It was happening again. Her mind was dragged back, 8 years into the past. Another bed, another child. Her little sister, Amani, 7 years old. Born mute, just like Ivy. And the night Amani tried to speak, her first word rose from her chest like a miracle, until her eyes widened in horror, her voice cut off mid-breath. She never spoke again. She never breathed again. Alice's eyes filled, but her hands stayed steady. Back in the present, Ivy gasped, collapsing back on the pillow, breathing, shaken, but alive. Jacob Watson's voice cut through the silence. "What did you do to my daughter?" He stood in the doorway, eyes blazing, having watched enough to be terrified, and not enough to understand. Alice didn't turn. "She almost spoke, Mr. Watson. Her body is ready. Her voice is ready. But something is blocking it." Jacob stepped forward, rage trembling in his voice. "If you endanger her again—" Alice turned slowly, her voice icy calm. "If I don't push her through this, she'll never speak. And one day, when that device fully activates, she won't just lose her voice. She'll lose her life." Jacob stopped breathing. "You're lying." Alice lifted the device. The blue glow reflected off Jacob's eyes. "You saw the monitor. You saw the surge. Something in your daughter is shutting her down the moment she tries to speak." Jacob's anger began to crumble. "What is it?" he whispered. Alice looked at Ivy, now staring at them both, silent, but no longer empty. "There is something inside your daughter," Alice said quietly, "and it does not want her to speak." If the first word Ivy ever tried to say could kill her. What truth is so powerful, so dangerous, that something inside her is willing to stop her heart to keep it silent? Keep going. The answer is coming. Jacob Watson had built empires out of data. There was no server he didn't control, no patent he hadn't reviewed, yet somehow he had lost control of his own daughter's body. He didn't sleep that night. Alice didn't either. While the estate was still under darkness, Alice walked into Jacob's private archives, a biometric-sealed room few had ever entered. She didn't need force. She used access credentials only family should have. On the mahogany table sat Ivy's neonatal file, a thick binder of test records, birth scans, developmental reports, page after page, most stamped with a red label, confidential, eyes only. Alice flipped through them. The deeper she went, the colder the room seemed to grow. Page 43. Missing. Page 44. Partially blacked out. Page 45. Signature required. Jacob's signature. Except, the date was 1 week before his wife died in childbirth. A time when Jacob was in Tokyo, negotiating a tech acquisition. Alice traced the ink with her finger. He never saw this. He never knew. She turned the page. Project Harmonic Genesis. Infant Vocal Neural Integration Protocol. Subject: Ivy Marie Watson. Status: approved for Phase 1 implantation. Alice's throat tightened. She saw it in cold print. Primary objective: suppress natural vocalization to allow full neural adaptation. Ivy wasn't born silent. She was silenced. Footsteps echoed behind her. Jacob stood at the doorway, eyes shadowed, as if age had struck him overnight. "What are you doing in here?" Alice turned the binder toward him. "Reading what you should have read 10 years ago." Jacob stepped closer, confusion turning to disbelief, then horror. "I never signed this," he whispered. Alice didn't blink. "It's your signature." Jacob's breathing turned ragged. "That's impossible." He grabbed the file, flipping desperately. Page 48. Neural implantation complete. Device grafted into vocal nerve pathway. Signed, Jacob Watson. He stumbled back. "This is forged," Jacob said. But even as he said it, his voice cracked. Alice closed the binder with a calm finality. Your wife didn't die due to complications. She died in a controlled environment, monitored by your own company's technology. Jacob looked up sharply. Pain flashed across his face. No, no, she went into distress. The doctor said, The doctors were yours, Alice said softly. They were never trying to save Ivy's voice. They were testing if the device would silence her before birth. Silence fell. Jacob looked at his hands as if realizing they were covered in blood only he couldn't see. Are you saying, my own company? Did this to her? Alice stepped forward. Ivy wasn't born mute, Mr. Watson. She placed a hand over the binder. She was made mute. Jacob's world, his logic, his legacy, his billions, collapsed in that one sentence. Everything he had built was now a crime scene, and his daughter was evidence. Jacob closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was no power left in his gaze. Only a father. Breaking. Jacob Watson was a man who believed in what he could see, touch, and control. But as he stood beside his daughter's bed, watching Alice prepare equipment no hospital recognized, he felt something new. Fear. Alice placed the glowing device, now connected to a biospectral scanner, just beneath Ivy's jawline. The room darkened as the scanner projected light across her throat, creating a 3D holographic map of her larynx. What appeared on the screen did not resemble human anatomy. It was moving. Jacob's breath caught. What is that? Alice's voice was calm. Something inserted when she was an infant. It's nanotech, but not from any Earth-based medical registry. Jacob stepped back. What do you mean not Earth-based? Are you suggesting... Before he could finish, the coil inside Ivy's throat pulsed. A faint blue glow flickered beneath her skin. Ivy's eyes snapped open. Her breath hitched. Alice, Jacob warned. What is it doing? Alice didn't respond. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Not in English. Not in any modern language. She spoke in an ancient African dialect, passed through generations of healers, one she had sworn never to speak aloud again. The coil responded instantly. It pulsed brighter. The biospectral monitor spiked. Ivy gasped. Not in pain. In recognition. As if the nanotech inside her had been waiting to hear that exact sound. Jacob panicked. Turn it off. You're hurting her. Ivy, Alice called softly, still speaking the ancient tongue. Can you hear me? Ivy's lips moved. A vibration rose in her chest. The first word of her life trembled on the edge of existence. Then the coil reacted violently. The blue glow turned red. The nanotech twisted, like a living serpent inside her throat. Ivy convulsed. Monitors screamed. Jacob shouted into his earpiece. Security! Now! Armed guards burst into the room. Alice raised her hand to stop them, but too late. One guard grabbed Ivy's wrist. The coil attacked. A pulse of energy shot through Ivy's skin, launching the guard backward. He crashed against the wall, body rigid, eyes wide in shock. The coil was not just reacting, it was defending itself. Ivy's entire body glowed faintly blue, as if something within her was activating for the first time in 10 years. Alice turned to Jacob, eyes fierce, voice ringing with urgency. This is not a medical implant. This is a message. Jacob stood frozen. A message from who? Alice looked back at Ivy. Not who, she whispered. What? The walls of the Watson medical suite thrummed with electricity as Ivy lay strapped gently to the surgical bed. Not to restrain her, but to keep her safe from what was waking up inside her. Jacob stood frozen beside Alice, eyes locked on his daughter as the coil inside her throat began to glow, pale blue, turning into a dangerous violet pulse. Alice knew they had seconds. "This can't be removed with scalpels," she said urgently. "It won't respond to metal. It responds only to resonance." Jacob swallowed hard. "What does that even mean?" Alice met his eyes. "It means it listens." She stepped forward and placed her palm gently over Ivy's throat. The coil reacted, its glow now pulsing in rhythm, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to any human. The monitors around them flickered. Engineers later would claim it resembled a digital awakening. Alice closed her eyes and spoke, not in English, but in the ancient tongue only few women in her bloodline had ever spoken. A language not recorded in any book, but carried in memory. As she chanted, the coil responded. It twisted, it tightened, it latched deeper into Ivy's nerves, spreading tendrils up her spine, lighting neural pathways like constellations. Jacob lunged forward. "You're hurting her." Alice stopped chanting for a moment, only long enough to say, "If I stop now, she will never speak again. If I continue, she might not be the only one who does." The lights went out. Every screen in Watson Industries went black. Security rooms, labs, trading floors. Then, all at once, they came back on. But instead of data, every single screen showed Ivy. A live camera feed of her in bed. Her eyes glowing a bright, unnatural silver blue. The coil had hijacked the entire building network. Ivy's breath hitched. Then, she screamed. Her first word wasn't a human word. It wasn't a name. It wasn't a cry. It was a frequency. A sound that cracked glass. A resonance that shook the walls. Every light shattered. Every electrical system glitched. Technicians across the building collapsed to their knees, clutching their heads. Jacob fell back, eyes wide, hands over his ears. But the sound wasn't heard with ears. It was heard inside the mind. And while Ivy's lips were moving, it was not Ivy speaking. Security footage later confirmed this. Her eyes did not blink. Her expression did not change. And when the scream ended, a voice came through the speakers of every device in Watson Tower. One word. In Ivy's voice, but layered with another voice beneath it. Ancient. Cold. Intelligent. "Awaken." Alice stepped back as the coil dimmed, its work done. Jacob stood trembling, unable to comprehend what he'd heard. What the world had just heard. This was no miracle of speech. This was contact. Ivy has spoken. But it wasn't Ivy who spoke. So who, or what, just awakened through her voice? And why did it choose the daughter of a billionaire? Keep watching. Because everything is about to change. The executive boardroom at Watson Industries was built for billion-dollar decisions. This morning, it would decide the future of the human race. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooked the city skyline. Holographic stock tickers floated midair. The Watson logo glowed behind Jacob's seat, normally a symbol of triumph. Today, it felt like a target. Board members entered in tailored suits, unaware of the storm that had already begun. Jacob stood at the head of the table, eyes hollow, voice stripped of all corporate polish. "We are not here to discuss profits," he said. "We are here because my daughter has been implanted with a sentient technology by this company." Gasps and whispers rippled across the room. Margaret Sloan, head of global finance, leaned forward. "If what you're saying is true, Jacob, then we are sitting on the greatest technological breakthrough in human history." Dr. Howard Pierce, head of R&D, nodded eagerly. "Do you understand what this could be worth? Neural control, speech activation, communication beyond human limits." Jacob slammed his hand on the table. "My daughter is not a breakthrough. She is a child who was violated." Silence. Then, laughter. Cold, calculated laughter. "You don't see it, Jacob," Margaret said. "This chooses your daughter. That means Watson Industries owns the future." Before Jacob could respond, the doors burst open. Corporate security. 4 men in black tactical suits, and in the center of them, Ivy. She walked calmly, eyes still faintly glowing silver blue. Not resisting, not afraid, like someone who already knew the outcome. Jacob lunged forward. "Get away from her!" Security blocked him. "This is board-authorized detainment," Margaret said coolly. "She is company property until we understand how to control what's inside her." Jacob's blood turned to fire. "She's my daughter." Dr. Pierce smirked. "Your daughter is the most advanced communication interface ever discovered. You signed the authorization a decade ago." Alice stepped forward from the corner of the room, where she had been quiet until now. Her voice sliced through the room like lightning. "She is not an interface." Everyone turned. Alice placed her hand over Ivy's heart. "She is the key. The coil didn't choose her by accident. It chose her because she was born with what others don't have." "And what is that?" Margaret scoffed. "A frequency," Alice replied. "An ancient human resonance. Passed through bloodlines. Not manufactured. Not bought. Not controlled." Pierce shook his head. "My team will extract it." "You can't extract what you don't understand," Alice warned. "She is not carrying the message. She is the message." Suddenly, every screen in the boardroom flickered. The stock tickers froze. And Ivy spoke. No one saw her lips move, but her voice echoed through the room, layered, powerful, undeniable. "They are listening." Glass cracked in the windows. Lights flickered. A static hum filled every speaker. Board members went pale. "What is that?" one whispered. Alice turned, her face solemn. "It's the sound of consequence." Jacob's pulse raced. "We have to get her out of here." Margaret stood. "No, she stays. If the world is changing, Watson Industries will control it." Alice's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about control. It's about survival." Red warning lights washed the Watson Industries boardroom in crimson. Sirens wailed from deep within the building. A coded lockdown had been triggered, not by any human hands, but by Ivy's voice. Alice turned to Jacob. Their eyes met in a single silent agreement. Get Ivy out, or lose her forever. They moved fast. Security systems glitched as Ivy's presence distorted every electronic signal. Cameras shut down. Door locks disengaged. Elevators froze mid-floor. It wasn't malfunction. It was response. "What's happening?" Jacob shouted over the rising static. Alice didn't slow. "Her frequency is no longer reacting to the implant. It's calling back to where it came from." They reached the medical corridor, just as a wall of agents in bio-defense suits surrounded Ivy. Government operatives. Corporate scientists. Everyone wanted the child who had just awakened something no one could control. "Step away from the asset," an operative commanded. Jacob stepped in front of his daughter. "She's not an asset. She's my—" Ivy opened her mouth, and the world shook. Not physically, yet every light shattered. Phones melted from their own batteries overheating. Heart monitors spiked in every room. Her voice was not screaming. It was speaking. For the second time in her life. Only this time, she was not alone in her voice. "Initiation." The sound echoed through every surface, vibrating the bones of everyone present. Agents fell to their knees. Scientists clutched their ears. Jacob reached for her. "Ivy, stop! You're hurting yourself." But Ivy wasn't in pain. She looked peaceful. Alice whispered, realization dawning. "She's not trying to destroy us. She's activating something." Panels on the wall burst open as hidden servers powered on. Jacob's company, his life's work, began sending data transmissions at light speed across unknown networks. "What is that?" Jacob gasped. Alice answered what no one else could. "A beacon. The coil is a transmitter. It wasn't meant to mute her. It was meant to hold her voice until the right moment." Jacob staggered. "You're telling me Ivy wasn't disabled? She was protected?" Alice nodded. "Shielded. Silenced not because she was broken, but because the world wasn't ready to hear her." Suddenly, the city outside flickered. From the boardroom windows, they watched every screen across the skyline turn to static, then display a single pulsing blue light, synchronized with Ivy's heartbeat. Ivy looked up at her father. Her eyes, now luminescent, locked onto his. She spoke one more word, a word that wasn't English, a word that didn't belong to Earth. "They are coming." The air in the room dropped in temperature. Jacob's knees nearly gave out. "Who's coming?" he whispered. Before Alice could answer, every power system in the building shut down completely. Silence. And then, in the distance, far beyond the skyline, something moved. Something waking. Something answering Ivy's call. The world would remember the day Ivy Watson spoke, not as a miracle, but as a warning. By sunrise, Jacob Watson had done what no billionaire in history had dared to do. He shut down his own empire. In an emergency press conference streamed worldwide, Jacob stood before thousands of flashing cameras. His voice shook, not from fear, but from conviction. Watson Industries is no longer a corporation. As of this moment, every dollar, every patent, every ounce of power I own is being redirected to one purpose: protecting the child who may be humanity's last hope, and exposing the truth of what we unleashed. He didn't resign to save face. He sacrificed everything to save his daughter. Global markets crashed. Stockholders raged. Politicians demanded answers. Jacob didn't flinch. He walked away from billions so Ivy could live. Alice Phillips, once introduced as a maid, now stood at the center of a global movement. She launched the Voice Initiative, an organization not built on technology, but on protection. Its mission was simple: locate children around the world with unexplained neurological silencing. Shield them. Listen to them. Prepare the world for what their voices might awaken. Some called these children anomalies. Others called them harbingers. Alice called them the choir. Ivy no longer hid. She didn't just speak. She resonated. Her voice could disable entire networks, reveal hidden frequencies, and detect lies spoken near her. Nations wanted to control her. Armies wanted to weaponize her. But Jacob and Alice stood between Ivy and the world like unbreakable pillars. They protected her. They listened. And as Ivy's understanding grew, one truth became clear. She wasn't chosen to destroy humanity. She was chosen to warn it. Standing beside a memorial fountain newly constructed in the Watson estate, now the Voice Sanctuary, Alice placed her hand gently on Ivy's shoulder as she spoke softly to a global broadcast. Ivy's eyes glowed faintly. Her voice, when it came, was steady. Not the voice of a child. The voice of destiny. "The silence was never my curse. It was your protection. They were coming. Now, they are listening." The world trembled. Because if Ivy had spoken 3 words, awaken, initiation, only one word remained. The word that would determine if humanity stood or fell. Jacob looked into the camera, voice filled with a father's resolve and a leader's warning. "Prepare yourselves. Ivy Watson is not the end of a story. She is the beginning of a transformation." Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and stay with this story, because the silence has ended, and what comes next will echo across the world.